Hi there, it's Jonathan here. This is 2450 and we're reading the book of Genesis in 24 days. Today we are covering chapters 16 and 17. Here we are introduced more fully to the idea of slavery. It just sort of pops up in the Bible story. Why human beings felt that they needed to enslave some and free others is a mystery. As with the first century life of the New Testament, slavery was very much part of the economy and a way for wealthier people to provide care for services rendered by the poorer amongst them. But the very notion of such a power differential is surely very much part of the fall. We're also struck by the fact that multiple wives has become a thing. Back with Lamech, it was obvious he was a bad guy, so to speak, but here God's man Abram and Sarai, why so? The best answer we have is the idea that life is primitive and somewhat barbaric, and caring for one another is done best in the context of marriage, even if it's to multiple people. Having said that, Sarai's suggestion of Hagar providing a son was not God's plan A. It seems this free will piece plays a role constantly, and God weaves his big picture around and through it. You'll notice that Genesis 12 to 50 is filled with the most dysfunctional family dynamics you'd ever expect to find in any point in history. This detail is intentionally given us to keep reminding us that all the humans are all sinful and desperately in need of God, no matter how important their role in the story appears to be. 16:8 stands out for its philosophical purity. Where have you come from and where are you going? What a question. Hagar gets herself caught up in the blessing of God, which has been pronounced over Abraham. Another reminder that blessing is a legitimate force. Hagar is pregnant and will give birth to Ishmael. Travelling around Egypt some years ago, I found it interesting to discover that Muslims of Egypt believed that Ishmael was the son of promise and Isaac the slave girl's son. It is said that 1612 is an apt description of how the Arabs on the whole have interacted with one another throughout history. Give it some thought, you be the judge. Hagar calls God El Roi, which means the God who sees. Quite a beautiful name to use of God when you're a powerless slave in a culture lacking many helping hands. Verse 16, Abram has been waiting 11 years for the son of promise before he takes things into his own hands with Hagar. Chapter 17 is our second big covenant passage, the circumcision covenant. Abram is now 99 years old, always a good reminder that God is not in a hurry. The promise of a son came to him when he was 75 years old. 17:1-8 is a recap of the covenant God has made with his people. It's a promise that comes all the way down to us in the 21st century, blessed to be a blessing. Abram has his name changed to Abraham, father of many nations. Always strikes me as important to recognize the patience involved in being used by God. To all who would put their trust in God, verse 8, he promises himself, I will be their God. This is a key in following God, or in our case, following Jesus. Is God enough himself for us? This is ultimately what God offers. Himself. Verse 9 and following, God instructs Abraham about the circumcision of all the males in his family. Why only males? Well, it can only be cultural. God is connecting all the time in culturally and historically understandable ways with his people. The circumcision is of the genitals, reminding God's people when they go to the toilet and when they are intimate in marriage that they belong to the one true living God. Finally, 17:15, Sarai gets her name changed to Sarah and is promised she will actually bear a son at age 90 and his name will be Isaac. How long have you been waiting for God to answer your prayer? How long have you been waiting for God's promises to be fulfilled? He doesn't seem in a hurry, does he? Yet he is faithful. May God grant you faith and patience. Enjoy God's word.